Hey there, guys. Today we're going with a new little work. A little work before our protagonist here will be able to have several fights with several people. Well, not several things, but here we are going to follow a protagonist, a little more different from the common of the works that I usually bring here on the channel, but for you who are already enjoying it, subscribe here on the channel to give that our support for us, but for this rambling, let's go to the focus of our story. Already starts with our hero there. He woke up only that totally in a different place. He then, confused, ends up seeing in front of him a guy who he called for him, but at this moment, he wonders if he was not dead with a headache and with one eye here and there. He ends up realizing that this guy was too strange. Well, he ends up trying to understand what kind of class or race he was. But he ends up ignoring. Maybe that, but now confused. He thinks he traveled in time, because his real name, Lin Xingguan. And in the past, he gives his girlfriend a gift, and that was for her. She then, with all pleasure, ends up taking only that. Upon opening, she is surprised because the gift that our Xingguan wanted to give her was a little mouse. Like the Mickey Mouse mouse, she did not like it so much, throwing it aside. She curses him, calling him an idiot for having given something like that. But at the moment, we see him there laughing on the bench of so much happiness, only that at this moment she accidentally ended up giving a push in our protagonist, but the push was enough for him to advance a little forward, and he unfortunately ended up falling on the side of the road, but after almost a year without him, appeared on the channel. He appeared. This was our true Saman, who here appeared uncontrolled and ran towards him of our poet at the moment. He only observed the end getting close to him, being run over by the true Saman, a great honor, and still being sent to another world in the body of a guy named Ming Parasi. This was more than new, quite surprised for him to be in another world. But now he stays with the back pain, can see that he ended up falling from some floors quite high. However, he ends up being interrupted by his friend beside him, asking him not to look at other things. Since there, if he did not obey that guy in front there in a short time, he will be beaten to death. But according to the memory of this body that he ended up transmigrated, he ends up remembering that Zizai is a bastard who literally ended up with our MC thrown on the ground, only that different from the other loser body that he just reincarnated. He is different. Our protagonist suffered a lot there to conquer, to reach this cave, that this was the place where he maybe could be changing his life. But due to the encounter with that bastard, he does not have so many. He will not have so many chances like that. But now it will be different. He is in the body of this guy here now. Things may be changing, but at this moment they think that everything would be changing for him in front of him. Ended up appearing a beast, leaving the two. They're quite scared because already in front of him appeared a beast. This of disaster chaos of level 2 with their forces. The two do not have how to fight with this thing here. So if you fall into the hand against this beast in front of you, everyone will die, while there, they stayed to worry about it. Appears that thing that everyone here, I know that everyone wishes to hear a whistle. A whistle of the system appearing for our hero. The hero was in danger, so the system will be active now. The emotion collection system will be active, giving our protagonist new skills. It does not matter if there is someone beside you there with fear. It will be something new to our MC. Now that his trap was active, he just asks for the system skill collection to appear soon. So he ends up calling Chink Monkey his friend. He asks him to stay calm since he knows the weak points of this beast in front of him, but it was impossible. It was not possible to find its weak point. He points in the direction of the monster's legs. So in short, you need to hit the legs. Hitting, you can win. Then scared, his friend turns trembling in his direction and asks if really he was telling the truth. If he had lied, he would die at that moment. Then he again asks Skim Monkey if he ever lied to his face. He then understands at this moment. He activates his skill class of fire, then arises in his hand, and now he will be going with everything, and believes that Xiangyang is not lying. And if he was lying, neither of them would be coming back alive. Now he asks for it to look at him. The monster then looks in his direction, only that ends up activating its skill too. Only that there was the opportunity. He saw opportunity, then put that hand forward. Well, he will hit the weak point that our protagonist told to hit. See, the power was quite big. The stove grew, but with so much expectation, It was not so much because the fire ended up not doing so much damage, just a little burn, leaving the bull quite irritated now. With our hero's friend ends up receiving the news from the system that the bull got irritated. There he activated C% of his power, but our protagonist at this moment sees there his opportunity. He sees there the system delivering to our protagonist the chance to level up that 50% to 70% more damage on the monster Shanghai. He asks to come here to help. Well, right, he just irritated the bull more. So it was all ugly for him. He needed help. Well, while our protagonist stayed in the background watching, he saw more things appearing. His friend was scared, so ends up the percentage kind of gigantic more to our hero. But he says he will not be helping his friend, no. He will have to be dealing with this monster alone there. He will be watching from the background. He just asks to give another punch, since the previous punch he gave was just a serious injury. He gave inside the leg. Well, he needed to give another, so now he will then believe in our hero again, and will be giving another punch. The bull then prepares. He gives the paw back and jumps. He again uses that skill of his, of high speed, but now he lowers. Now he will be using his other punch again, but now stronger again. Calling for Rangar, he asks him not to deceive. If he deceived, it was the end for both the punch, then ends up fitting again, at that point where he hit before. But again, it didn't even leave a scratch on the monster. The monster became more and more irritated. Now the beast releasing smoke from its nose was prepared, desperate. He calls for Changguan. He runs towards him. He asks for help. He now will be dying if he didn't have help. And now this time he really screwed. He and the two here very likely to die, if they don't do a single thing. But no need to worry because our protagonist was already prepared, and at this moment the system then appears interrupting all that cliché that was happening there. It shows C, the Chaos, Beast of Bull Demon. P, Panic reached the anger level of 80%, well-needed dia already. His friend, on the contrary, already managed to reach 65 of fear and pure. Well, our protagonist, who then ate a banana, remember this banana. He ends up asking himself about this, 65, he wanted much more. But ignoring maybe the negative part of his friend, he in the end had a great reaction. Since our little bull, there ended up having an increase of 30% in his attribute points there. This only at once, only that. There remembers that banana, he takes it in hand. And guess, he throws in the direction where that, I don't know. But in that random direction that he has the banana, we see there our MC's friend running from the bull. The bull runs like steam towards him, but he didn't see the banana and ends up kind of slipping on the banana while he was falling from the banana. He wondered what the hell the reasons had a banana in the cave, but it was no use anymore. The bull was already close to him, and he very likely was going to die because in front of him there he saw the bull running at more than 1,000 towards him, while there the bull ran towards him. We observed there the system commenting that Toro managed to reach 85% rage, but on the contrary, his friend reached 100% fear. Our protagonist now can gain some more talents there, and he is happy now that our men will not be able to protect our Skinner monk, and he asks that he no longer be afraid, since Daddy the monster here appeared to save our days. And at this moment when he talks about it, he starts to walk towards his friend. Only at this moment, a shadow emerges from his feet. Something there started to appear behind our protagonist, that then ends up being demonstrated an ability of our hero. It is Overlord, while there that shadow starts to stick to our hero. He asks to increase the abilities of that. The system hears our hero now allowing this ability to stick to our like an armor that stuck to his hand. Then his body transforms into something else. The thing that managed to transform was a level C shadow armor. The thing was mass. This armor was an indestructible armor. An armor that allows his combat attributes to increase a lot. So now it was better to cut the Shadow of Ages, which meant that a sword could appear, and that appeared in his hand now. With the sword in hand, our protagonist approaches his friend, but his friend called Pingua, and he asked to save him soon, since who put him in all this conversation here was him.